And thanks for joining us. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us at the Queensborough Huddle. I am going to toss to my colleague, Andres Pasmino, to give an introduction and a warm welcome to our Queensborough president. Andres?
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present a very old friend, former council member Donovan Richards, and current Queensborough president, BP Richards. We are always very, very excited to partner with you, to work with you. We appreciate your friendship for all of these years and your support all along. This is just another way to bring the elected officials closer to the people. And I know this is your favorite part, Borough President. So we wanted to make sure that we bring the people of Queens, in front of you, so you are able to say a few words, to answer a couple of questions, what we're seeing in the communities, as well as taking questions from the community. Like you are, born and bred in Queens, a son of South, of Jamaica, Queens. And this is just a great opportunity to have you here again. And we really, again, like I said, we appreciate your fellowship and your friendship all along. And with that said, I give you the digital floor so you can say some great remarks and we get started.
All right, thank you, Andres, and to Dr. Branch, thank you so much. And of course, to the Citizens Committee for New York City. It's always great to be in the room with you because you've done so much to contribute in building the foundation of Queens. And when I say that, I often say government can't resolve all problems, right? People closest to the problems also have to be a part of the solutions. And that really means investing in those organizations as well, those grassroots organizations who also have their tentacles in every part of the borough as well. So I want to thank you for supporting those organizations, and I want you to keep supporting them, especially during this time. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Queensborough President Donovan Richards, elected all like 19 months, 4.5 elections, still standing, and it's been a true honor to represent every corner of this borough, all 2.4 million residents. And obviously I was elected, as I am most times, through some of the most traumatic times of our history. When I was elected to the city council, Hurricane Sandy had hit my district. So I spent a lot of time helping to rebuild the Rockaways and parts of Rosedale, and became the chairman of 3 different committees that were important to our city, but also to our community, environmental protection, then moved on to chair the zoning and franchises committee in the council, and then public safety I ended off at the height of the George Floyd protests. And then fast forward, Melinda Katz became the district attorney. I had no plans on ever running for anything else. Actually, I thought the council was going to be it, but through my experiences in the council, I thought that I would be able to bring a fresh perspective to Borough Hall, and ran, as most of you may remember, about 4.5 elections, won, and have come through during a very interesting time where we are trying to rebound from this pandemic that hit our borough so hard. I spent the course of the last 19 months, of course, restructuring community boards, which are very important, and I'll talk a little bit later about that, but ensuring that, our community boards are reflective of the diversity of Queens. So that was something that I wanted to structure right away, coming into Borough Hall, to make sure we diversify the boards, because they are important as we talk about shaping policy, especially coming out of this pandemic. And then, I could give you all the rhetoric in the world, but we have to ensure, coming out of this pandemic, we know that the pandemic exacerbated a lot of issues around food insecurity, around the economy, around access, education, mental health. All of these things were impacted during the pandemic. So we spent a great deal of our time ensuring that we find real dollars to invest into communities, but really specifically focusing in on, and not saying we're not focusing on in every community, but making sure communities that historically were disinvested in are seeing a large tranche of those investments. So I now, in my first 19 months have brought home close to $130 million out of my capital budget, which is going into investing in schools and parks. Healthcare has been my largest priority by far. So ensuring that ways we can find ways we can enhance and expand healthcare institutions across the borough has been of the top priority, highest priority to me. And then, as we talk about restructuring, but also our economics in Queens, ensuring that even as these conversations around land use and economic development are happening, that our community's voices are being heard in the room. And, we've sent some very clear messages over the course of the last month that we're not going to do the bare minimum in our borough, right? As we talk about this affordability crisis, we want to see real and true affordability across our borough. And we've had some controversial projects, which we've had to vote no on. And then subsequently, those developers have come back with higher percentages of affordability, which is going to be key in sort of ensuring that we don't just build back our borough, but that we build it back better. And then as we talk about redevelopments like JFK Airport, you might have seen us break ground on Terminal 1 at JFK, which we anticipate 10,000 jobs will be created at Terminal 1. And one of the questions I've often asked is, who are those jobs going to? So since I co-chair the JFK Advisory Board along with Congressman Gregory Meeks, we've been relentless in ensuring that all MOUs and commitments around jobs and zip codes will be adhered to when it comes to these jobs. And out of those 10,000 jobs, 6,000 of them are union jobs, which is key because that gives us an opportunity to move people into the middle class. And so please look out as we launch apprenticeship programs with some of those unions in the days to come. Those are going to be key as we talk about how do we ensure that we bring our communities back in a stronger way. So I could talk all night, but I know that we have questions. But we've been keenly focused in on all of the things that impact our social safety net. We now are dealing with migrant crisis in the city. Queens has seen the largest influx of our brothers and sisters coming in from Venezuela and Colombia and parts of Africa. So we've been navigating that and working closely with the city and also sounding the alarm on some of the issues that have impacted the borough already, including affordable housing, jobs, the economy, and saying that the city, state, and federal government have to invest in Queens. And we had the Speaker of the House in Queens yesterday, Nancy Pelosi, in which my colleague, Congresswoman Grace Ming, so eloquently put together a tour yesterday in Forest Hills for her to tour a senior center. But it also gave us an opportunity to speak to her about the needs of Queens as we talk about building both human infrastructure, but also the other infrastructure needs of the borough. So I am glad to be here, glad we can finally get this going, and want to thank once again the Citizens Committee for New York City, who I work with for probably feels like over a decade if it hasn't been already. I want to thank them for being a true democratic voice in our city.
So thank you for that that expansive overview. You are quite busy and not sure how you keep all those balls and plates in the air, but definitely a hat tip to you, Mr. Borough President. So here is my first question for you. Broadly speaking, public safety is on the minds of New Yorkers, and there are 5 pillars to public safety. And those pillars include economic and food security, education and community, housing and the physical environment, physical and mental health, and stability and personal safety. And Queens residents have indicated to us that the top 3 quality of life concerns for them are affordable housing at about 19.5%, education.
Recording in progress.
Education at 18.5%, and fresh food at 13%. And so you've given us an overview of some of the things that you're doing. But my question around public safety and those elements is this: what are some concrete strategies that are being deployed to address those specific three concerns that your constituents have indicated to us that we have culled from the data?
So let me start with housing, which is on all of our minds. And I come from affordable housing, so I know how important it is. And born to teenage parents, for sure, I had to move around as a child. When people ask me, where did you grow up? I can say pretty much every part of Queens, because we had to navigate trying to live, in Queens, which, you go back, I'm 39, you go back over 30 years ago, was a struggle, and it's only continued to balloon. So we've largely been focused on shaping a lot of land use decisions across the borough. I am happy to say we are seeing different communities that historically didn't even want affordable housing start to come to the table and say, we want deeper affordability. So that's been something we've largely navigated. And I'll say, during my tenure, we've probably approved, and, as the borough president, it is advisory, but although I do make an advisory decision, they still do, my projects still do, my decisions still do shape projects. So I'll give a good example of that. And we've done probably close to 10,000 or more units already in my first 19 months as borough president. And, what I'm most proud about is that we really are reaching those deep depths of deep affordability, 30% AMI and under, to get people in units. But we also know that New York City is dealing with a housing crisis, right? Over 60,000 folks are in shelter. I think yesterday it was reported we're seeing the highest number of folks we've ever saw in the shelter system. And of course, you can pound that on with the migrant crises, and we're going to continue to see those numbers grow. Right. So every bit counts. So I'm happy to have approved a lot of units of affordable housing now as borough president, but even prior to being borough president, I approved close to 10,000 units alone. I'm not even counting that in the number I just gave in the Rockaways. And those are projects are 100% affordable with homeless set-asides. And people are moving in from the shelters. I meet people from the shelters who are moving into units, moving into dignified, quality housing. So I'm proud of that work, and that work continues. And then we have, we've had a fair share, at least two controversial projects. One in Forest Hills, where we had a developer say he couldn't get to those deeper depths of affordability, and we turned that project down. And then they came back and they got to the deeper depths of affordability. And now we have Innovation Queens, which has been a very controversial project, which is slated to bring 2,800 units of housing to Astoria, for instance. And, the developers have come to us with a mere 30% of affordable units with no real deep depths of affordability at 30% AMI. And we used our bully pulpit to have them come back to the table, in which now they've come back with 500 units in Astoria at 30% AMI, which is unheard of up there. Yeah. And then, 1,100 of those units are slated to be permanently affordable units, and the council still has to vote on it, and they'll have their hearing next week. But we're, keeping our thumb on that scale to ensure that we do get to deeper depths of affordability there. And then we just did Highlands Point North with Councilmember Caban, which was a really good project. It was 30% affordable, but over 200 units going to families, I believe, under 30% AMI. So, these projects are largely what we're focused on shaping. And then, fast forward, we're looking at sites like Creedmoor. And it's been a site that no borough president has been able to get done. It's over 100 acres. And it's about time we have conversations around mental health, supportive housing, wraparound services on that site. And I've sounded the alarm on it. And so I'm not here to win a popularity contest. we are going to get this site done on my watch because the needs are so immense. In terms of food insecurity, we're navigating that in several ways. Of course, I get an expense budget, so we're very supportive of food pantries. We even had a food pantry that was getting evicted, which did get evicted out of Flushing houses, Bland houses in Flushing, La Jornada. So we're working to make sure, because they were feeding like close to 5,000 or more people a week, and they were evicted out of Bland houses. So we're working on that, and then we're looking at how do we grow our own food. You got to remember during the pandemic that a lot of our food was being transported through the Hunts Point food market, and that got shut down because nothing could really come in at one point.
Right.
So how do we invest in our own urban agriculture? So we're using, once again, our land use tools to build out community gardens. We're going to have a farm in the Rockaways, for instance, that's going to be about an acre, which is going to be unheard of, run by Campaign Against Hunger, which will grow our own food, And then we're also focusing in-house, working with our hospitals. So places like Elmhurst Hospital now have food pantries in them. And then we also are looking and using our schools also. So we're focused on hydroponics, which is something that I started to build out in my time in the council, and I got to go back and cut a ribbon a few months ago. We're building out hydroponic labs in about 12 schools this fiscal year. And that allows our children to, one, learn about urban agriculture, grow their fresh food and fruits, but also take it home to their families, which is key as well, as we talk about access to fresh food and fruits and affordability, especially coming through a time where we're seeing a lot of inflation. And then, you talked about physical and mental health. We just launched on yesterday a big initiative with BetterHelp. We secured $2 million for free mental health counseling for Queens residents. You can go to my website, queensbp.org, and you can sign up. I mean, I do teletherapy once a week, because I've had to learn how to navigate this new world. Like, it's one thing being a council person, but navigating the stresses of family, trying to figure out how to navigate family, work, health, personal, your own personal stuff, and run an entire borough, because you really put yourself last when you're in a position like this, right? So how do you make sure that your mental health is strong so that you can help other people as well? You have to be strong and lead by example when you're in a position like this as well. So I do teletherapy once a week, and I'm not ashamed to talk about it, especially as a Black man. We need to really talk about it, especially coming out of this pandemic. So that initiative was launched yesterday, and it's really a game changer, because I've had men, women come up to me who, said, thank you, like, I've been procrastinating on this, and it's about time I do this. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, I could keep going, but on education, we're also investing heavily. We're going to announce $20 million going into our local schools in a few weeks. We're working on that announcement now, and that's to make sure we're closing the digital divide, making sure that all of the schools that don't have STEM labs, and every community should have access to quality education. And we want to make sure we're investing in the things that the schools request, including auditorium, sound systems, you name it, the gamut. And we're covering the entire gamut on a lot of this stuff. So that's where we're at.
So I must tell you, I'm enjoying this conversation, and I really love that you're focusing on housing, because place and belonging are so central to our identity, not only as individuals, but as communities. And just as a policy and equity advocate myself, one thing I realize, if the basic public goods are lacking, not to be alarmist, but it could have national security implications.
Yeah, no doubt. And let me talk on that today, because I was out and what I want to say is it's been very interesting. And I used to chair the public safety committee, so I am well versed on policing, their budget, and also understand that, the police have a role to play, but they can't have the only role.
Right.
You look at sort of the crime patterns in Queens, and not to be an alarmist, but you sort of look at the 109th precinct. I was meeting with them and some stakeholders today and elected officials, and you sort of look at the patterns of, when you hear crime is increasing, right? Like you look at a community like that, and it's, they have four murders compared to 5. But really, when they talk about an 82% increase in crime in that precinct, which covers Flushing, College Point, Whitestone, it's burglaries, it's people going into CVS and stealing deodorant and other things. And, I had to say to the commander today, we also have an obligation. We're looking at the economy, and that's why we want to focus these job opportunities and center them in these communities as well, because the goal is always to get people off of food lines. That's why we want to focus on making sure that there's true affordable housing in the communities, right? Because these are a lot of times crimes of poverty, right? And you can't incarcerate your way out of poverty. You just can't.
Exactly.
You could throw people in Rikers all day, but they're coming out or they're going upstate, whatever, for 5-10 years. They're coming back into the community. So either we get ahead of it and invest in the things that are important up front, or this will be the repercussions that we see on the streets, unfortunately, if we don't invest in this. And the pandemic only exacerbated a lot of these issues. So we just have to continue to focus on getting ahead of it.
Absolutely. And so here's my next question for you. There is much to be said for the power of the collective, and there are many wonderful grassroots community leaders working in their Queens communities and neighborhoods, doing work to address some of the quality of life issues that we're here talking about today, and working to mitigate their negative impact. So tell us how Queens residents can partner with your office to scale up their work to have a greater impact.
Well, this is something we work on every day. I created, and Susie Tannenbaum, who is in my office, has started the nonprofit network. So if you're not a part of that network, you're missing out, because we have, I think it's close to maybe 200. I think if my numbers are correct, but Susie will correct me. I'm sure she'll put it in the chat.
It's 270.
170. I was close.
270.
Oh, 270. Okay.
Yes.
And more, and growing. And really, we use this network as a way, one, to filter information to nonprofits on things that we're working on. But specifically, I've tasked Susie, and Susie has been great in doing this work a long time. I've tasked her with getting folks who provide grants, foundations on, right? And we've raised, I think, close to 500, a little bit over 500,000 in private dollars for nonprofits across Queens just this fiscal year alone. And then on top of it, I get an expense budget, which is not great. My capital budget is immense. I talked about my $130 million, and we've been #1 amongst the other borough presidents, and they're doing a great job as well. But, Queens has to be #1s, and I'm competitive. So we've come in #1 on capital, but expense is very scarce. That's the difference between the city council. And the city council, you get a lot of expense, and then you get some capital, which is decent, but it's reverse as borough president. You get a lot of capital, but less expense from the mayor. But we've done as much as we can to make sure we spread the love. We have created, and there was a senior initiative, for instance, that focused largely on senior centers that was scrapped before I came in. We got the mayor to put that money back, the city council, I'm sorry, to put that money back. So now we have another pot of dollars to support senior centers, which also deal with food insecurity and other issues like that as well. So we go into budget session in January. I would suggest, if you're interested in applying, and our grants are very small. It's like painful to give small grants. But we do have nonprofits who are also scaling up and building infrastructure. So community centers, right? Organizations like Make the Road, the Boys and Girls Club of New York, we've been very supportive of. We're helping to expand many of their facilities. And then I talked about land use. When developers come to us, we point them, and I'm very careful, because you can't say, I'm going to approve your project only if you give this to this group. So we can't do that. We have to steer clear of that. But
Right.
what we do is we do recommend that they create community-based funds. A good example of that is in the Rockaways, where I negotiated a land use deal, and we created basically a Rockaway fund, which is $2 million over, I think, 10 years that this developer has to give up. And then there's a steering committee that actually delves out that money to local nonprofits within the community, free of us, of course, because we will put people together, but we stay independent of what those decisions are that are going to be made. So we also use these opportunities to shake the tree that way as well. And another good example, my heart is still hurting from the New York Mets loss this weekend, but we leveraged $18 million from the New York Mets
Wow.
for small businesses across Queens. 799 businesses received grants up to $20,000 from the New York Mets. And no loan, they weren't loans, grants. Like, we kept businesses open. So as we talk about the economy and keeping people working and keeping people afloat, especially our small businesses, we leverage that opportunity as well to ensure that our small businesses could stay afloat as well. So we're looking, so that's the way we leverage this position. And Susie has given me a goal in mind. I think I surpassed her goal already this year, but we got more work to do, and she keeps me on my toes.
So that is absolutely amazing. And my last question for you, and then we'll pivot to our featured community group, is this. So there are Citizens NYC grant winners who have gone on to elected or appointed office and who are leaders in New York City agencies. And so share with us, what is your why for public office, and what advice would you give to those thinking about elected or appointed office?
Whew, that's a loaded question. I came into government in 2003 as this big-eared kid, still big-eared. I had more hair though when I came in. I had hair, actually. I did have hair. But it was the unfortunate killing of my childhood friend, Darnell Patterson.
Oh.
So he was 19, I was about 18. He was murdered, a very close childhood friend. We got in some trouble together, but we sort of parted ways and took two different paths in life, but he was getting his life together at the period he was shot and killed. And it was like one of those moments that really sparked a flame in me to get involved, like looking at him in his casket. I was like, I'm going to do something. I don't know what it is. So I actually ended up volunteering for my local council member, who was James Sanders at the time, and going into his office, not knowing. And I volunteered like twice, and I was like, these politicians are clowns. and then I walked out. But then November in 2003, he must have had an opening in his office, and his chief of staff reached out, and I came in. I was in Timberlands and jeans, by the way, when I went in for the interview. I think I had braids at that point. I got my hair braided, cut my hair, went in for the interview with Timbs and jeans. And, he asked me, what did I want to do? I was like, I want to build community centers for young people. And, he hired me on the spot and gave me my opportunity. So I would say that volunteerism is always, and not everybody thinks you have to be an elected official. I mean, there are so many different, it's like a football team. We need people in different places. We need people at city agencies who are from our communities. We need folks sitting on their community boards. We have all these civic associations, and what you'll find is a lot of our civic leaders are aging out, or they want to pass down the baton, but ain't no young people because everybody's on social media. And social media is nice, but we need to see more young people engaged within the civic infrastructure in Queens. I mean, I can go to a meeting every night. I'm at a meeting every single night, every weekend I'm at some event. We have a lot of civic infrastructure in Queens, but I'm normally, and quite frankly, the youngest guy in the room all the time, right? So we need to see more of our young folks getting involved in the spaces we have already. And if you're interested in elected office, what I would suggest is, and I've seen, not that I'm suggesting get on the community boards to run for office, because I don't think that should be why you get on. you know, if you want to be in office, what's your why? You know, is it to be on TV? What is your vision? What do you want to get accomplished? And really, do you need to be in office to accomplish what you're saying you want to accomplish? Not everybody's going to be an elected official. So I would say it all starts with getting engaged, certainly building out your, you know, if you have an organization, you know, doing everything to empower people, to bring people in, to build up those organizations, because we need you. And then just if you are seriously interested, you got to learn the mechanics of office. You know, not everything is about a speech. You know, land use, these decisions we make every day impact people's lives. So be a student of your craft. And every day I'm learning. I don't, you know, even as borough president, I pick up books, I read other people's history, I look at land use and other things that have happened in other cities, and that has guided me and enabling me to even craft policy for New York City. You know, I got a whole bunch of pins in this from bill signings, and a lot of that came not because somebody came to me and said, here's a bill, put this in. No, it was me studying what was happening around in other cities, including even when you look at policing, right? I created basically the discipline matrix in New York City. Most of you don't even know what that is. You know, if an officer has an infraction in the police department, they now have a standardized penalty. They didn't have that before. And I learned about that just studying what happens in other cities when it comes to discipline and policing. You know, a lot of environmental policy I crafted, including on geothermal, solar energy on roofs. You know, every roof in New York City, any developer who wants to build 25,000 square feet and up now has to put a solar panel, a wind turbine, or a white roof on their roof.
Yeah.
New York City. So that was my bill. You know, something I studied from what was happening in other cities. So, and around the world, you know, I went to Paris. I saw that they turn their lights out at night, you know, at their commercial buildings and other things. The Eiffel Tower, lights go off after a certain time. That was policy that I brought back to New York City. So I would say just studying your craft, and it's never easy running for office, but if you are interested, be in your community. Your community has to know you.
Absolutely. You have to be seen and you have to be trusted.
Yep.
And so with that, I'm going to ask that we spotlight our community group, SEQ cleanup, and the Miss Karen Lawson.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say I am honored to be here. I thank the Queensborough president. I received a lot of keynote important lessons from what you just said, as far as, you know, studying your craft and, you know, being on top of your game. That is an important thing. SEQ cleanup, we started during the pandemic. You know, my motivation was just to get out and do something. You know, Queens, it was a lot of budget cuts when it comes to the park, came to the park department, sanitation. So, you know, gyms were closed. I wanted to work out. So I would go to different local parks. You know, every day my motivation was to go to a different park. So I just started to pay attention and just notice when I go to certain areas, especially in my community, Jamaica, Queens, you know, it was just a lot of trash, built up trash. And I just wanted to take the initiative. Found a few other community organizations in my neighborhood, made a flyer. You know, before this, I was DJing. So into DJing and community and doing community events. So I just wanted to tie in DJing and make cleaning and community cleanups a party. So you know, we just got volunteers together. That's where I started to meet a lot of the local community board members, NYPD, the local agencies. So it became a lot of partnerships with the Parks Department, the elected officials as well. So, you know, it was great to actually meet at that time, to meet a lot of my local elected officials, including Mr. Donovan Richards, you know. So, you know, it was a great moment for me. It was like an awakening to me. This pandemic was definitely an awakening to me. And so, you know, it became more community. I was more focused on home and making sure the home is good, you know? And so, you know, it's been a blessing. I'm thankful for Citizens Committee NYC for the grant that I have received. This past summer, we were actually able to incorporate physical fitness and dance fitness, jump roping. We did art therapy, drumming lessons. And, you know, just with the art therapy in particular, it was great to see the kids actually getting involved too. We had some mental health therapists come out, help them make stress balls, design stress balls, self-affirmation artwork they did, you know, like I am loved, I am beautiful, you know, so they can know and value and think about different things to describe them, you know, and just add some extra value to how they felt about themselves, you know, because this pandemic has not only been you know, a whirlwind for us, but the kids have been affected as well, you know. So just, you know, DJing workshops, we've been doing free lessons in the park, drumming, you know, music, as you can see in my background, right? Music is life to me. So, you know, so that has been my therapy too. So, you know, art, music, spoken word has been a lot of different things we have been trying to incorporate in this community. And I can't be remiss without saying, giving a shout out to all of the community partners that I have worked with, including, you know, Citizens Committee NYC.
So thank you for your presentation. We really, really appreciate you, Karen, and everything that you are doing in community and in Queens particularly to help that part of the city thrive, survive, and move forward. And now we're going to move to our pre-screened individual questions. And I was just scanning the chat to see who has been able to join us today. And we do have Sharon Turnage, who submitted a question that was vetted. And if we can spotlight Sharon, and I'm going to see if I can help. Oh, there you are, Sharon. Okay, good to see you. So Sharon, please unmute and ask the pre-screen question of Borough President Richards.
So hi, how you doing?
How you doing?
My name is Sharon Turnage, and I started the Talent and Code Foundation. We help mothers who lose their infants at birth, children that have life-threatening illnesses. And I also have the Lewis Danvers Leukemia Fund, and we help advocate for blood cancer awareness. So a lot of organizations is doing a lot of work in the community, especially like this month, October being Infant Loss Awareness Month. And we've just been doing a lot. And we've been in the neighborhood for many years doing the work, but we haven't always had the support of the elected officials. So I just wanted to know, what is your office and planning to do to help support a lot of nonprofits like mine who are doing a lot of work but not getting the help?
So let me just say this, and I said this a little earlier, you know, in terms of when people normally say support, they sometimes mean funding. So, you know, I like to I'm very clear that our expense pot is so stretched that it is extremely hard. So I talked about like the nonprofit network, and we got some great examples because sometimes we get foundations that come to us for specific causes. So we're able to say to them, so for instance, you know, we were focusing a lot on infant mortality earlier this year. My office hosted a lot of diaper giveaways, and, you know, we supported, for instance, in Baisley Houses, I believe they had like a, I'm blanking on the event now, a community baby shower. So we were able to, because Amazon is coming into Queens, say to Amazon, hey, we need Pampers, we need XYZ, and get those specific needs met for those organizations. So that's the sort so in terms of funding, and I would say that, you know, what's very important as well, your elected officials, and I'm not going to make all 50,000 events a year, but I have 70 staffers who are stretched. Let's be clear, we're stretched in every way because it's 2.4 million people. It's impossible to be everywhere. But I would suggest inviting, and I don't know where you're centered at. You said Jamaica?
I'm centered in Jamaica and I'm also a PhD
Right.
student. So
All
I'm
right,
doing like
perfect. So-
research.
Right.
So we just want to align with you, not even necessarily about funding, but like, you know, perinatal loss and perinatal health equity is big. And a lot of times we're out there hitting the pavements and we just need, even if your support is just putting the word out there and helping
Yeah,
us get
absolutely.
the message out there.
And that's why I would say just joining a nonprofit network if you're not a part of it as well, because we do use those during those meetings as information sharing, even for you to learn what other organizations are out there so that there's some natural synergy. The First Lady of Queens, who's out doing her book club tonight, is going to be largely focusing a lot in this area. So please make sure Susie gets that information. And she, you know, I talked about the mental health initiative. And this was like her brainchild, her and the Deputy Borough President, Ebony Young's brainchild, because we want to really get into those spaces and work on this issue. And I also talked about my investments in hospitals, because there are a lot of maternity wards that need to be built out. Because let's be clear, some of these institutions have not seen investments in their, you know, the places babies are delivered, right? So, you know, out of 20 million, we're doing a significant amount, including Elmhurst Hospital, St. John's Hospital in the Rockaways, like places that did not see investments in that, to try to do a lot of that preventative care up front as well. So when, you know, women go to deliver their babies, they can deliver them also in quality spaces, right? Jamaica Hospital. So we're working with all of these institutions to make sure that they also have the latest technologies as well. So yeah, so we're easy, we're not hard to find, but I would suggest definitely joining the network. And if you're doing events, just sending it out to, I think our email is qbpo at queensbp.org. So just send your events. And if I can make it, I will be there, you know, and if I can't make it, you know, we have somebody who does gender justice work in the office, really focused on women's issues, you know, we will make sure that we have representation there. And if there are needs, right, you know, we just need to know, and we will be upfront with you. If you have needs for specific items, for instance, just get that to us in an advance. If you give us advance notice, we can try to reach out to different people we know who may be helpful as well. But thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important. Especially, and we just had a big Black maternal health event at Borough Hall. Just a huge, we had a panel and, you know, we had hospitals there, just having a discussion on how we can improve, especially Black and brown maternal health in Queens, so.
Thank you. I just want y'all to remember that 1 million babies die every year at birth. And so I know we've been doing a lot of maternal health, but we need to do pregnancy loss and perinatal health. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the work that you're doing.
And I'd like to echo the borough president in my thanks as well. And I just want to also put a plug in for Citizens Committee for New York City's upcoming week of All In for New York City week. We're getting kicked off on Monday, the 17th, I believe, with a gala. On Wednesday, October 19th, is our Impact Summit, where we will be gathered virtually discussing the 5 areas that contribute to public and community safety. And so we're going to have some interesting folks. DA Bragg will be giving us the keynote. We have a variety of electeds who are serving on panels. We have community leaders who are also serving as panels, because let's just face it, you community leaders are the experts in your communities. And so we want to definitely hear from you about impact. And so our panels are all set, but we would love to see your smiling faces in the little 1 by 1 inch boxes on Zoom, and definitely come prepared with questions, comments, and things like that. Mr. Borough President, the other 2 remaining questions, I do not see the folks who submitted them. So your call, do you want to address?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So question 2 was from Marjorie Clark, and she wanted to know, when is composting coming to East Elmhurst? And how did the Q-Swab shape sanitation's decision to bring composting to Queens?
Oh, come on. It's already there. If you didn't know, all of Queens has composting now. We're the only borough with composting. Matter of fact, you should go to my Twitter handle. You'll see Scrappy, who is the sanitation department's mascot, was at Borough Hall taping with me yesterday. And my theme is don't be crappy, be scrappy. So you can literally call 311 and you can get your composting bin. And how did Q-Swab, which is the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board, what role did they play? When I became the borough president, I actually recognized the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board because we were the only borough, or I think we were the only borough without a solid waste advisory board. So I officially recognized them. They've created a board structure. I suggest if you want to be a part of that, I think we open applications up once a year for that. So please join that. And I'm happy to say all 2.4 million of you in Queens can actually compost. They picking up your yard scraps and your chicken bones and your steak bones and whatever you eat, your orange pills on your garbage day. So that kicked off officially, I believe, October 1st. It's a 3-month pilot. So we really need to get this right so that we can make it permanent. So the more of you that do this, the more permanent it could be. But the advocacy of Q-Swab really made this possible because, one, how do, I have a million ideas, but I don't know everything. So if you're an organization that has an idea and wants to inform us of something we should look at, and that's what Q-Swab did, we supported them. They gave us a few requests, write an official letter to the mayor, to the sanitation commissioner. We did it, and through their advocacy and through partnership with our office, we were able to be the first borough to launch in the largest community in this country to launch a composting program.
Wow, that's amazing.
Queens leads.
That is amazing. So I'm going to pitch the final question, and then we're going to let the people eat some dinner and then gather up them scraps and get them for composting. And this is it. So this question came to us from Lynette Shelbourne Barfield, and Lynette asks, what are the plans for traffic flow out of the Rockaways through 5 towns after resident vacancies are filled in the housing complexes in the redevelopment downtown for Rockaway?
So let me start with this, because parking always comes up when you do these developments. And, partially what we should be doing really is making sure that public transportation is running efficiently and effectively, right? Like those investments are key. And we know that parts of Queens, from Eastern Queens to Southern Queens to Rockaways, that it's probably easier to get to Florida by plane than Manhattan by bus and train on some days. So really focusing on some key areas like the ferry, but also we're focusing on pushing the city on expanding ferry service further east, right? That gets people out of their cars. We should be creating a bikeway, which is something I've spoken and working with the local councilwoman on, right? Like, do you need to drive up and down the peninsula if you need to go to a supermarket or the store? Like, you should be able to bike, you should be able to get on the train. We've talked about a limited A train with the MTA as well. Expanding the Atlantic ticket and Freedom ticket to the Rockaways is also a big priority to me, because the MTA always treats the Rockaways like the 6th borough. So we are having those conversations, even as the MTA pitches their congestion pricing plan as well. Let me just say this, there's always a conflict with parking and units. And I will be the first to say that affordable housing is the #1 priority to me. I'm sorry if you're in congestion, and I don't want you to be in congestion, but right now, I would rather put people in permanent housing. Unfortunately, even if it inconveniences you for 10 minutes, I'm sorry, housing first. What I've largely seen out there, though, even with the housing patterns, because this has been something raised, And all of the affordable housing we built out there. And you got to remember, with affordable housing, and I used to chair the zoning committee, you're mandated to put a certain amount of parking spots, right? Especially with the certain unit counts. But what we've seen out there is, even with the parking spots that have been developed, people aren't driving. I did a senior housing building out there, 200 units, and there's 0 cars in the lot. So I know that there's like this doom and gloom scenario with all, people having this perception, everybody's going to drive. But you got to remember the populations that are coming into these units, which are people coming out of shelter, people, and I'm not saying they won't eventually get a car, but their priority and what we're hearing from the community is we want housing. You also have to remember, with those 1,800 units coming down there, that 50% of those units are set aside for Rockaway residents. So you're not bringing in, if people have a car, they already got a car, so you're not bringing in necessarily new folks out of those into those units as well, who are going to bring cars as well. Not saying that we're not going to grow the population, because we have seen a population growth, but at this moment, in Rockaway Turnpike was widened. There was a nearly $60 million project that, or maybe close to $100 million project that was completed to ensure that, traffic flow would be better. But there's no perfect solution. Actually, there is a perfect solution. Better transportation, so people don't have to leave the peninsula. And you also have to remember, citywide, driving patterns are changing. People are not going into offices as much, right? So I think we have to be cognizant of that as well, that more people are working from home, more people are working on Zoom, right? So largely we've always had this notion to think, if you do 1,800 units, you better have 1,800 parking spots. But that's not even going to be necessary in a lot of cases, because we're building an economy out there, bringing new commercial. We want people to be able to live, work, and play in their community. And that's sort of the strategy, with nearly 300 or 400,000 square feet of new retail coming out there that are part of these projects. Community centers, right? We're building close to 3 community centers, new supermarkets. A lot of those folks are not going to have to drive in to Five Town or up the beach to now use a supermarket like I had to, or to get, now they'll be able to walk downstairs and walk into a 30,000 square foot new supermarket downstairs from their building, within walking distance of where they live. So I'm hoping that helps ease congestion. And I will say there are some challenges certainly around, and I've just met with the Office of Emergency Management. We want to make sure that in the event of a storm, that the city is more prepared than what it is now, than what we saw during Hurricane Sandy. So I do certainly understand that, and to ask them to update their routes, the evacuation routes, and those sort of things. But even in the downtown area, that's not a floodplain. That was the one place during Sandy that did not flood. And we anticipate that area will certainly, even with storm surge, not see the impacts that other parts of the Rockaways did. But I would say prioritizing the bikeway, prioritizing our bus lines, getting more service to run regularly is our highest priority, especially for the residents who are coming into those buildings.
So, Borough President Richards, on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Rasan Harris, and citizens, we really thank you for the time that you have taken to spend with your constituents this evening. We're 2 minutes before the hour. There are a whole lot of questions in the chat that we were not able to get to. So how can folks who connected with us tonight ask those questions of your office?
So one, let me say, I got the best staff in the world. I'm unapologetic about that, and they are on. I think I saw Susie's on. I think I saw Kat Zapata is on, and also Brittany. And we're not shy. As you can see, I'm very blunt. So we don't run from hard questions either. You can email, I guess, Susie, if you want to give your email, or Brittany, put it in the chat. And if there are questions on here, we will certainly make sure we get back to you and answer those questions. So I'll task the staff to figure out. My deputy chief of staff is on, Brittany Scott, the capable Brittany Scott. So I will leave it up to them. And, you know, there's always forums, you know, I mean, if you know, we do town halls, you know, we create different avenues. We just did Borough Hall on your block, for instance, where we did, you know, and we're doing these in different sections of Queens to break it out. So we did Southeast Queens first, where we did 23 events, including a town hall for Southeast Queens. So we're going to be moving that around the borough. So that'll give you an opportunity, one, to directly talk to me, but also to come to a public forum. And I believe the next one I think we're targeting is Western Queens for in a few months. And, you know, we'll probably do close to 20 events. So I would also suggest you sign up to our e-blast, which goes out every Friday with great information on it. It gives you a tidbit of everything going on, just a taste. But you can sign up at what is my website again? queensbp.org. I would suggest you sign up for the newsletter because we send out more than that, but we send out information on different programming. If you do have events, we can highlight them in the e-blast as well. We can't do everyone, but if there are events that are important, we also have a calendar on our page. So my staff does put events on our personal page as well that are happening around the borough. So please send that information and we'll do our best to promote it as well.
So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, your borough president, Donovan Richards, for the privilege of your time. We thank you and we bid you adieu and till next time.
All right, time to go help the 6-year-old with his homework. Wish me luck.
Good luck and good night.
All righty, take care. Good night, everyone.